Imagine trying to navigate these really complex currents of religious scholarship, political commentary, and mainstream media, all while challenging conventional wisdom, sparking, intense debate. Today, we're diving deep into the life and work of a figure who really embodies this very journey. Our deep dive today is into Reza Aslan. He's an Iranian American scholar, writer, television host. And his career has consistently, pushed boundaries and provoked thought. He's known for his insightful analyses of religion, culture, politics, but also, for his remarkable ability to stir the pot, sometimes quite dramatically.
Mm-hmm. And we've gathered quite a wealth of information for you today. We're looking at Aslan's entire career, really. His academic journey, all his writing, his TV projects, and even the major controversies he's faced along the way. Our mission, basically, is to extract the most important nuggets from all this material, to help you understand not just what he's done, but maybe more importantly, why it matters. And the broader implications of his, multifaceted career. It's about giving you a kind of shortcut to truly grasp his unique impact.
Exactly. We're going to journey through his personal story, explore how his academic rigor actually informs his popular works, unpack the significant impact of his media presence, and even delve into some of the really intense debates surrounding his approaches. It's a journey that reveals a lot, I think, about the intersection of scholarship and public life. So settle in, because this is where it gets really interesting. Okay, let's unpack this journey by starting at the very beginning, laying the foundations, so to speak, of his multifaceted mind. Reza Aslan was born in Tehran, Iran. That was May 30, 1972. But his early life took a dramatic turn when his family fled the Iranian Revolution in 1979, a huge upheaval. They eventually settled in the San Francisco Bay Area, and he graduated from Del Mar High School in San Jose back in 1990. I mean, I can only imagine what that displacement and cultural adaptation must have been like, fleeing a revolution, relocating across the world. He's even spoken about something quite poignant from that time, about pretending to be Mexican in the 1980s, apparently because of the discrimination faced by Iranian Americans then.
Yeah, that detail about pretending to be Mexican. It isn't just a poignant anecdote. It really offers a raw glimpse into the immense pressures of assimilation, the complex social dynamics faced by immigrant communities, especially during periods of, heightened tension like the post-revolution hostage crisis era. What's truly fascinating is how this early experience, this displacement, and the fundamental need for cultural adaptation likely profoundly shaped his perspective. This personal struggle to navigate different cultural narratives, different identities, to understand where you fit and how you're perceived, it very likely fostered his ability to bridge those gaps in his later work. It allowed him to understand the nuances of identity and cultural friction in a way that maybe purely academic observation might not capture. It gives him an inherent lived empathy for the challenges of belonging and difference. And that's a powerful lens, right, for viewing his later studies on religion and society.
Absolutely. That early navigation of identity clearly seems to have laid the groundwork for an incredibly impressive academic trajectory, which is nothing short of a scholarly deep dive itself. He's got a BA in Religious Studies from Santa Clara University. Okay. Then a Master of Theological Studies. That's an MTS from Harvard Divinity School. Impressive. Then a Master of Fine Arts and MFA in Fiction Writing from the University of Iowa's Writers' Workshop. That's a different direction. And then a PhD in Sociology from the University of California, Santa Barbara. His 2009 dissertation, Global Jihadism as a Transnational Social Movement, a Theoretical Framework focused on contemporary Muslim political activism. Honestly, that makes my single degree feel a bit inadequate. How does one even manage such a breadth of study without feeling completely pulled in different directions?
It's truly remarkable, isn't it? This incredibly diverse educational background. I mean, spanning religious studies, theology, creative writing, and sociology. It provides him with a truly unique interdisciplinary lens through which he approaches complex subjects.
Yeah.
And to your point, how does it all connect? Well, that Master of Fine Arts in Fiction Writing, from Iowa no less, that's a crucial detail here, I think.
Yeah. How so?
It suggests an early and probably deep emphasis on narrative and communication. Not just what happened, but how stories are told and how they resonate with people. That skill set would prove absolutely critical for his later success in popular media. Because, it's not enough to simply know complex subjects. You have to know how to tell the story of that knowledge, make it engaging, accessible, capture a broad audience. He's a scholar who fundamentally understands the power of narrative.
That makes sense. The storyteller aspect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, his PhD in sociology, despite his strong religious studies background, that's actually a specific point of academic debate we'll unpack a bit later. It highlights the complexities of academic credentialing itself. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, right? This blend of rigorous analytical tools, from sociology understanding societal structures, social movements, combined with the narrative power of fiction writing, and the contextual depth of religious studies. It equips him not just with vast knowledge, but with that rare skill, the skill to articulate complex historical and religious phenomena to a broad audience. He makes dense topics understandable, captivating, essentially translating academic insights into relatable human stories. And that's incredibly valuable in today's media landscape.
That rich academic tapestry is, well, it's further colored by his personal spiritual journey, which has been anything but static, it seems. He was born into a 12er Shia Muslim family. That's a significant branch of Shia Islam. But then at age 15, he actually converted to evangelical Christianity. I mean, talk about a shift.
A huge shift.
Then, the summer before attending Harvard, he converted back to Islam, specifically identifying with Sufism, which is often described as the mystical, introspective dimension of Islam. He completed his Harvard degree in 1999. Okay. By 2013, his views had evolved even further. He described Islam as, and this is a direct quote, a man-made institution and a set of symbols and metaphors for expressing faith, emphasizing that it's not more right or more wrong than any other symbols and metaphors. He even said, it's that all religions are nothing more than a language made up of symbols and metaphors to help an individual explain faith. And it's symbols and metaphors that I prefer, but it's not more right or more wrong than any other symbols and metaphors. It's a language. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm. His personal journey through these different major faiths, Shia Islam, evangelical Christianity, then back to Islam, but with an adherence to Sufism, that's absolutely crucial for truly understanding his work. This direct, lived experience with conversion, with reversion, it lends a unique, empathetic insight into different belief systems. It's far beyond just an outsider's academic observation.
Right. He's been on the inside of several traditions.
Exactly. He has literally wrestled with faith on a deeply personal level from within multiple traditions. And this deeply held view of religion as a man-made institution, offering symbols and metaphors, rather than some absolute singular truth. It's a core philosophical stance. It profoundly informs his scholarly approach. It allows him to analyze faiths comparatively, sociologically, without ever claiming one is inherently superior or exclusively true. He sees them as different languages, for the same human impulse toward the divine or toward meaning.
So what does this offer you, the listener? Why is this personal journey so important?
Well, it provides vital context for his analyses. It suggests a scholar who hasn't just read about faith in books. He's experienced it, lived it, struggled with it. That can make his explanations more relatable, perhaps more resonant, even when he's discussing dense theological concepts or historical details. This personal stake can make his analyses connect more deeply, especially when he's challenging conventional understandings or assumptions. It highlights that his scholarship isn't purely theoretical. It's informed by a profound personal quest for meaning.
This profoundly personal understanding of faith, it undoubtedly shapes how he approaches writing about religion, which leads us directly into his impactful literary career. His early works really made a splash, didn't they? Deconstructing Islam for a Western audience, often challenging the prevailing narratives of the time. His 2005 book, No God But God, The Origins, Evolution, and Future of Islam. That's a nonfiction work describing the history of Islam and advocating for a more liberal interpretation. It controversially attributes current controversies within Islam to factors like Western imperialism and what he calls self-serving misinterpretations of Islamic law by past scholars. This was a direct, powerful challenge to the whole Clash of Civilizations thesis that was so prevalent, especially post 9/11.
Absolutely. A very direct challenge.
Yeah. Then in 2009, he published How to Win a Cosmic War: God, Globalization, and the End of Terror, which was later re-released in 2010 as Beyond Fundamentalism, confronting religious extremism in the age of globalization. This book delved into the ideology of groups like Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, examining religious violence across Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, so a comparative approach. Aslan argues, and this is key, that the U.S. war on terror actually parallels the very cosmic war rhetoric of its adversaries.
That mirroring effect.
Exactly. He makes a crucial distinction between Islamism, which he argues has legitimate political goals and can potentially be negotiated with, and jihadism, which he says dreams of an idealized, unattainable pan-Islamic past and is fundamentally different. His prescription for winning this cosmic war, it involves engaging moderate Islamic political forces in democratic processes, stating, quote, "Throughout the Middle East, whenever moderate Islamist parties have been allowed to participate in the political process, popular support for more extremist groups has diminished." The New Yorker praised it as a thoughtful analysis, and the Washington Post called it a very persuasive argument. So it got attention.
It definitely did. And these early works clearly demonstrate Aslan's deep commitment to reframing the public's understanding of Islam, particularly in that post-9/11 era when so many simplistic, often fear-based narratives were taking hold. No God but God is that direct challenge to reductionist views, offering a much more nuanced historical theological perspective, pushing back against the idea of Islam being monolithic or inherently violent. Then, How to Win a Cosmic War provides that critical lens on the language of conflict itself. His core insight there is fascinating. When we, in the West, frame conflicts like the War on Terror in absolute good versus evil terms, we inadvertently mimic the cosmic war rhetoric of our adversaries.
Yeah.
He highlights the idea of cosmic war as a kind of ritual drama, where earthly battles are seen to reflect heavenly ones, and how American rhetoric inadvertently created this cosmic dualism with al-Qaeda's jihad narrative.
So understanding that helps avoid fueling the fire.
That's the argument. By understanding this mirroring effect, we could avoid inadvertently empowering extremist narratives. We can pursue more nuanced strategies instead. His distinction between Islamism and jihadism is a key analytical tool he offers. It invites a more sophisticated policy approach than just a blanket condemnation of all Islamic political movements, urging instead an understanding of their diverse motivations and goals. And his concrete policy suggestion about engaging moderate Islamist parties, that's a strong, actionable takeaway, even if complex to implement.
So these books, they offer you, the listener, a framework, not just for understanding Islamic history or extremism, but also the broader dynamics, religious conflict, global politics. They challenge simple narratives and provide tools for more critical engagement with the news, with discourse around these topics.
Exactly. It encourages looking beyond those surface-level interpretations to grasp the underlying ideological structures at play. A deeper dive, really.
Okay, so from reinterpreting Islam's past and present, Aslan then turned his scholarly gaze to a figure at the heart of another major world religion. This led to one of his most widely discussed and certainly debated works, Zealot, The Life and Times of Jesus of Nazareth. Published in 2013, this book offers a historical account of Jesus, portraying him not just as a spiritual leader, but as a political, rebellious, and eschatological Jew, whose proclamation of the coming kingdom of God was essentially a direct call for regime change against Roman rule and the corrupt aristocratic priesthood in Roman Judea at the time. It was immensely provocative, to say the least, and certainly challenged many conventional Christian understandings of Jesus.
Provocative is definitely the word. A bold, scholarly move.
And here's where it gets really interesting and quite controversial. The media firestorm part. July 2013, Aslan was interviewed on Spirited Debate by Fox News chief religion correspondent Lauren Green. Well, she seemed clearly unsatisfied with Aslan's credentials, or perhaps his background. She repeatedly questioned why a Muslim would write a book about Jesus.
The central focus of the interview, really.
Right. Aslan, understandably, defended himself quite strongly. He stated, quote, "Because it's my job as an academic, I'm a professor of religion, including the New Testament. That's what I do for a living." The interview, it lasted about 10 minutes, focused much more on his background than the actual content of the book Zealot. And it went viral, massively viral.
It did. And that virality, perhaps ironically or perhaps predictably in today's media climate, it propelled Zealot up the charts. Number 4 on the New York Times hardcover bestseller list, number 1 on Amazon's U.S. bestseller list. It was an accidental but incredibly effective marketing campaign, wasn't it?
Absolutely. But the incident sparked significant debate, right? Not just in the media, but within academia itself.
Oh, yes. Elizabeth Castelli, she's a professor of religion. She criticized Green's, quote, anti-Muslim bias and the conflation of the academic study of religion with personal religious identification, which, as you highlighted, is a common misunderstanding in public discourse. Her point was that a scholar's personal faith, or lack thereof, shouldn't automatically invalidate their academic inquiry. That's basic academic freedom.
But Castelli also raised some questions about Aslan's credentials, didn't she?
She did. She expressed some concern over Aslan describing himself simply as a historian. She suggested he could legitimately claim expertise in history of religions, which aligns more closely with his UCSB sociology PhD's interdisciplinary nature, but felt that his claims are more grandiose than that, that the label historian implied a different kind of training.
Okay.
And the Washington Post journalist Manuel Roig Franzia echoed this critique, noting UCSB doesn't offer specific degrees in history of religion per se.
So there was pushback even from within academia about how he framed his expertise.
There was. But it's important to acknowledge the counterpoints that emerged, too. Aslan's own dissertation advisor, Mark Juergensmeyer, who's a very respected scholar, robustly defended Aslan's characterization of his doctorate. He pointed to the inherently interdisciplinary nature of UCSB's program and Aslan's extensive coursework in religion. And the Philadelphia Inquirer also observed that UCSB's program allows students to, quote, tailor their studies around a topic, not a department, which supports the idea that his chosen field of study was effectively the history of religion, just housed within a sociological framework. So the debate itself really highlights the complexities, maybe even the occasional silliness, of academic boundaries and labels.
So, okay, on one hand, Zealot itself represents this bold scholarly move, challenging traditional Christian interpretations of Jesus, placing him firmly in his historical Jewish context as a revolutionary figure. It forces us, or you, the reader, to consider Jesus through a different historically grounded lens, whether you ultimately agree or not.
Right. It sparks that critical thinking.
But on the other hand, the Fox News interview became this massive flashpoint, illustrating a broader public misunderstanding, or maybe sometimes a deliberate misframing of academic expertise in religious studies. It powerfully highlighted the discomfort some audiences and some media outlets have with scholars from outside a particular religion studying its foundational figures. It raises really critical questions, doesn't it?
Absolutely. This entire episode serves as a powerful case study for you, the listener, on the potent intersection of scholarship, media, and public perception. It raises truly critical questions we all need to consider. Like, can a scholar's personal faith background legitimately invalidate their academic research? Or is that itself a form of prejudice? How do media narratives shape the reception of scholarly work, especially when that work challenges deeply held beliefs? And perhaps most importantly, how do we, as consumers of information, evaluate expertise? Especially when that expertise comes from an unexpected source or challenges our own ingrained perspectives.
It encourages a deeper look at the whole public square of ideas, how information is presented and received.
I see.
Okay, so while Zealot certainly catapulted him into the public consciousness, Aslan didn't stop there. He continued to explore the vast landscape of faith and other significant works. In 2017, he released God, A Human History. Here, he explores the history of religion, theorizes how humans began to conceive of supernatural beings, and eventually, God, all presented in that accessible, scholarly style he's known for.
Right, tackling the big concept of God itself.
Then he turned to a more specific historical narrative in 2022 with An American Martyr in Persia, the epic life and tragic death of Howard Baskerville. Kirkus Reviews called it an intriguing read that breathes life into a pivotal moment of Persian Iranian history, connecting back to his heritage there.
A fascinating, lesser-known story.
And most recently, in 2024, he published a kid's book about Israel and Palestine. I mean, that's quite a range, isn't it? From the conceptual history of God to a specific historical biography to a children's book on a deeply complex, ongoing political issue.
It really is an impressive breadth. And each work offers a unique facet of his intellectual curiosity and his commitment to communication. God. A Human History, for example, showcases his ability to synthesize vast amounts of anthropological, archaeological, theological information into a compelling narrative about the evolution of human spirituality. It shifts the focus from specific doctrines of individual religions to that universal human impulse, the impulse to understand the divine, tracing how our conception of God has changed over millennia. It's not just about what people believe, but why we believe and how those beliefs evolved.
That seems fascinating.
Then his work on Howard Baskerville, An American Martyr in Persia, that demonstrates his continued interest in Iranian history and cross-cultural narratives, connecting back to his own heritage, as you said. This book tells the largely forgotten story of an American missionary who went to Persia, now Iran, in the early 20th century, got deeply involved in Iran's constitutional revolution, and ultimately died fighting alongside the constitutionalists, became a hero there. It breathes life into a specific historical moment, showing how individual actions can have profound international impact.
Wow.
And a kid's book about Israel and Palestine? That's a fascinating move. It suggests a new and important avenue for him, engaging with complex, emotionally charged topics at an accessible level, trying to foster understanding from a young age, presumably by simplifying core historical narratives without taking a definitive side. That's a challenging task.
It certainly is. So these works, taken together, they really highlight Aslan's consistent dedication, don't they? Making complex religious and historical topics understandable to a wider audience, regardless of their prior knowledge or background. It's clear he's not just writing for academics in an ivory tower, he's writing for the general public, seeking to broaden their perspectives.
Exactly. That commitment to accessibility is a hallmark of a scholar aiming for broad public impact, not just academic recognition within a narrow field.
And that commitment extends beyond his own writing, too, right? You mentioned he's also actively shaped the literary landscape by curating the voices of others.
That's right. And this is another fascinating dimension of his work. In 2011, he edited Tablet and Pen, Literary Landscapes from the Modern Middle East. This is a major anthology featuring nearly 200 pieces, poems, short stories, essays, many translated into English for the very first time, from Arabic, Persian, Urdu, and Turkish literature. The sheer scale of that project, compiled with a team of regional editors and, get this, 77 translators. It truly underscores the monumental effort involved.
Wow, 77 translators. That's a huge undertaking. But what's the core takeaway here? Why does this work as an editor matter beyond just, being a lot of hard work?
Well, these editorial projects profoundly reflect Aslan's commitment to cultural exchange and interfaith dialogue. It's a consistent thread running through his career. Tablet and Pen is a significant effort to expose Western audiences to the rich, diverse literary traditions of the Middle East, directly challenging stereotypes and fostering understanding through shared human stories, poetry, narratives. It's a direct antidote to those monolithic portrayals of the region we often see.
Giving voice to the region itself?
Precisely. And simultaneously, also in 2011, he co-edited Muslims and Jews in America, Commonalities, Contentions, and Complexities with Aaron J. Hunt Tapper. This collection of essays directly explores contemporary Jewish-Muslim relations right here in the United States, highlighting his dedication to fostering understanding in complex intergroup relations, especially at a time when such dialogue is often fractured or fraught. The key insight is that he's not just a commentator, he's an active bridge builder in the literary and cultural spheres, using his platform to amplify other voices.
This commitment to storytelling and cultural dialogue, it extends far beyond the printed page, as Aslan has also made significant waves in the world of television and media production. He founded Aslan Media, which you mentioned was a platform for alternative coverage of the Middle East and its global diaspora. And back in 2006, he co-founded BoomGen Studios with Mahad Tusi, a studio specifically focused on bringing nuanced Middle Eastern stories to American audiences. This sounds like a very deliberate strategy.
These ventures are indeed a testament to Aslan's proactive approach to shaping narratives about the Middle East. He recognized, I think, that writing books, while impactful, isn't the only way to reach a mass audience in the 21st century.
Right. Visual media is huge.
Exactly. He moved beyond merely writing about it to actively producing and influencing visual media. BoomGen Studios, in particular, demonstrates a strategic effort, integrating diverse cultural stories into mainstream entertainment, aiming to shift perceptions, create empathy through the power of visual storytelling. They've consulted on major projects like Disney's Prince of Persia, the Broadway musical of Aladdin, Jon Stewart's directorial debut Rosewater, and the Oscar-nominated documentary The Square about the Egyptian Revolution.
So, real mainstream projects.
Absolutely. They even executive produced ABC's biblical epic of Kings and Prophets, which was a retelling of King David's story filmed in South Africa, showcasing this range and ambition.
So what does this mean for you, the listener? Why should you care about these production ventures?
Well, it means that more nuanced, more diverse stories about the Middle East are actively being brought to your screens and stages, potentially enriching your understanding beyond what traditional news or entertainment might typically offer. It's a powerful reminder that who gets to tell the stories and from what perspective profoundly impacts how we perceive entire regions and cultures. Aslan's move into production highlights his deep understanding of this power and his strategic effort to leverage it for what he presumably sees as better cross-cultural understanding.
His influence in television wasn't just limited to production, though. He also stepped into significant creative and on-screen roles himself. In 2015, Aslan served as a consulting producer for the second and third seasons of that critically acclaimed HBO series, The Leftovers.
Ah, yes, great show.
He was apparently instrumental in shaping the protagonist Kevin Garvey's character arc in Season 2. That demonstrates his ability to apply his understanding of complex human psychology, spiritual searching, to fictional drama. That's a fascinating application of his expertise, isn't it? Taking academic insights and applying them to a character's internal journey on a major TV show.
It really is. It shows how his deep thinking about religion and meaning could translate into compelling narrative arcs.
Then, in 2016, he hosted Rough Draft with Reza Aslan on the Ovation Network. This was a talk show where he conversed with acclaimed authors, writers in film, TV, journalism, positioning himself as an intellectual interviewer, leveraging his natural curiosity and communication skills to extract insights from other storytellers.
Right, showcasing another side of his communication skills.
And Showing yet another facet of his work, he co-wrote a sitcom pilot called Allah and the Family, which was based on his own experiences as an Iranian immigrant growing up in Oklahoma. ABC actually bought the pilot, though it hasn't been produced yet, as far as we know. But still, that's a stark contrast to consulting on a dark drama like The Leftovers.
These projects truly showcase his remarkable versatility, don't they? And his continuous drive to engage with ideas across different forms and genres. From the profound, almost esoteric discussions on belief and suffering in The Leftovers, to the potentially relatable and comedic exploration of immigrant identity in Allah and the Family, it's a compelling demonstration of how he translates his scholarly insights into accessible entertainment. Aiming to connect with diverse audiences on multiple levels, drama, interview, humor, he understands that different mediums require different approaches to effectively communicate complex ideas.
However, it was a different television project that would thrust him into one of his most significant public controversies, one that really became a major flashpoint. This was CNN's spiritual travel series Believer, which premiered in 2017. The show followed Aslan as he immersed himself in and experienced various fringe and often, let's say, disreputable or misunderstood religious traditions internationally. He himself compared it to Anthony Bourdain. Parts Unknown, a show known for its immersive, sometimes edgy cultural experiences.
Like setting a certain expectation.
The very first episode, which focused on the Aghori sect of Hinduism in India, became a massive point of contention almost immediately. Aslan was heavily criticized for sensationalism, for alleged anti-Hinduism, notably for that infamous scene where he ate part of a human brain while meeting Aghori sadhus, which was widely seen as a provocative stunt.
That scene got a lot of attention.
The backlash was swift and severe, coming from numerous Hindu American organizations. The United States India Political Action Committee stated the show characterized Hinduism as cannibalistic, amidst what they described as rising anti-Indian hate-fueled attacks at the time. Context matters there. Vamsi Juluri, a professor of media studies, called the episode reckless, racist, and anti-immigrant. Strong words. While Asim Shukla of the Hindu American Foundation accused Aslan of being poorly informed, circulating common stereotypical misconceptions, and indulging in religion porn just to grab ratings, it was an intense, very negative reaction.
And the criticisms didn't stop at just the general tone or that one specific scene. Critics pointed to specific alleged mischaracterizations and inaccuracies in the portrayal. For instance, the show calling Varanasi the city of the dead, which, while it's a major site for pilgrimage and cremation, critics argued reduces a deeply spiritual and vibrant city to a morbid cliché. They also mentioned referring to the sacred immersion of ashes in the Ganges River as dumping, which sounds disrespectful rather than ritualistic. Furthermore, critics argued the show portrayed the Aghors, a very small, extreme sect, almost as representative or as an exception in the struggle against the caste system in a way that was misleading, and that it fundamentally misunderstood the distinction between Varna, the four broad classes in ancient Indian society, and Jati, the far more numerous specific hereditary groups or castes.
That's it.
Complex social structures being simplified.
Right, nuance is lost.
They also accused him of misrepresenting the very notion of God in Hinduism itself, which is incredibly diverse. And adding another layer to the controversy, organizations like American Hindus Against Defamation and the Hindu American Foundation questioned why Aslan's own religion, Islam, was not covered in the series, asking if there was a double standard.
How did Aslan respond to that?
Aslan responded that he had actually planned to cover the Ashura festival in Pakistan for the show, but had to abandon it due to prohibitive insurance costs related to security concerns there. And he pledged to cover Islam if the series continued. But, well, it didn't. This entire controversy really serves as a microcosm, doesn't it, of the huge challenges in presenting nuanced cultural and religious practices to a mass audience, especially when filtered through a Western media lens, and especially when focusing on practices considered fringe or shocking. The Aghori episode exposed that very fine line between immersive journalism and outright sensationalism, igniting a significant debate about representation, cultural sensitivity, and the potential perpetuation of harmful stereotypes, particularly about non-Western religions.
And then things escalated further, leading to the show's cancellation. On June 9, 2017, CNN canceled Believer's planned second season. This happened after Aslan posted some profane anti-Trump tweets following the London Bridge attack. Aslan called President Trump, quote, a piece of shit and a man-baby. Very strong language.
Very strong, very public language.
Aslan issued a statement afterwards saying, I am not a journalist, I am a social commentator and scholar, and so I agree with CNN that it is best that we part ways. He also defended the Agori episode itself in a separate Facebook post. But for CNN, the tweets seem to be the final straw. It really shows how a public persona, especially a politically charged one, can clash with a major media organization's brand identity.
Exactly. And that cancellation highlights a crucial point. How an individual's commentary, even if made outside their primary professional role, maybe on their personal Twitter, can have significant repercussions in today's highly polarized, politically charged media landscape. Aslan's distinction, his argument that he's a journalist versus a social commentator and scholar, is key to understanding his perspective on this fallout.
How so?
He was essentially arguing, I think, that his academic and commentary roles allowed for a different kind of expression, a more opinionated stance, perhaps more advocacy than a traditional journalist might typically adhere to, where impartiality is often seen as paramount. But clearly, CNN disagreed about where that line should be drawn when he was representing their brand on air.
Right. The platform matters.
Absolutely. So for you, our listener, this whole Believer incident is a powerful case study on media ethics, cultural representation, the responsibilities of public figures operating across different platforms. It prompts us to critically examine how fringe cultures, how non-Western religious practices are portrayed, the potential for misinterpretation, for sensationalism, and the broader implications of a host's personal political statements on their professional projects. It also challenges us, maybe, to consider our own biases when encountering unfamiliar religious practices and how we consume information about them, a vital lesson in critical media consumption.
Beyond his media projects, Aslan has consistently engaged with the broader political and philosophical discussions of our time, often with equally strong opinions, as we've just seen. This brings us back to a thread we first encountered when discussing his book, How to Win a Cosmic War. Let's revisit that cosmic war concept, maybe do a deeper dive into his political analysis there.
Okay.
Aslan's analysis of the war on terrorism, first presented in that book, describes al-Qaeda's jihad not just as holy war, but as a cosmic war, a kind of ritualistic drama where participants believe they are enacting a heavenly battle right here on Earth. He argues that American rhetoric of a war on terrorism inadvertently mirrored this cosmic dualism with al-Qaeda's jihad, effectively creating, or at least reinforcing, the very narrative it claimed to fight against.
This analysis provides a really sophisticated framework, I think, for understanding religiously motivated conflicts. It moves beyond a simple good versus evil binary. By highlighting the rhetorical similarities between opposing sides, he challenges conventional wisdom. He urges a reconsideration of strategy. His core argument is that by labeling the conflict in such existential, absolute terms, the U.S. inadvertently played into al-Qaeda's own narrative, their narrative of a final apocalyptic showdown between pure good and pure evil.
Which empowers them, in a way.
Potentially, yes. His emphasis on democratic engagement of moderate forces offers a practical, if obviously complex, alternative to purely military solutions. It's rooted in a sociological understanding of how social movements gain or lose legitimacy. He consistently differentiates between Islamism, which he argues often has negotiable, sometimes legitimate political goals, and jihadism, which he sees as dreaming of an idealized, uncompromising pan-Islamic past. His proposed solution remains engaging those moderate Islamic political forces in democratic processes, because, as he stated, popular support for more extremist groups has diminished in scenarios where that happens. It gives people a legitimate, democratic outlet for political grievances rather than forcing them into extremist camps.
That makes sense, providing alternatives.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, how might this framework apply to other global conflicts, where religious or ideological narratives are deeply intertwined with political objectives? Think about conflicts, even seemingly secular ones, where groups adopt an almost existential us versus them narrative, total opposition. Aslan's framework encourages us to analyze if, in those situations, both sides might be inadvertently playing into a similar ritual drama, where the enemy isn't just an opponent, but an embodiment of absolute wrong. This forces a deeper look at the rhetoric, the motivations, the underlying ideological structures that truly drive these complex situations. It's a potentially powerful tool for de-escalation and promoting understanding, not just reaction.
This nuanced perspective on conflict seems to extend to his vigorous advocacy for fundamental human rights and religious pluralism as well. Aslan has been an outspoken advocate for religious freedom, for the protection of religious minorities throughout the Middle East. He has specifically called for That's a significant stance to take, isn't it? Especially given his Iranian heritage. critiquing the government there so directly on this issue.
It really is significant. His advocacy here demonstrates a consistent commitment to universal human rights that seems to transcend specific religious affiliations or even national loyalties. His call for the protection of the Baha'i community in Iran is particularly noteworthy given his background. It highlights his willingness to critique practices within a country connected to his own heritage, even when it might be personally or politically uncomfortable. This isn't just a detached academic observation. It comes across as a passionate plea for justice. He also issued a very strong warning, saying that the persecution and displacement of Middle Eastern Christian communities represent, quote, nothing less than a regional religious cleansing that will soon prove to be a historic disaster for Christians and Muslims alike. That underscores the gravity he sees in the situation for these vulnerable communities and the broader implications for the region's cultural and religious diversity. He sees it as a loss for everyone.
So the takeaway for you, the listener, from this advocacy.
It highlights the urgency, really, of interfaith understanding and the protection of minorities, especially in conflict zones or under authoritarian regimes. It grounds these sometimes theoretical discussions about religion and rights in very real, very human consequences. It urges your attention to ongoing human rights issues, reminding us that religious freedom isn't just an abstract concept talked about in universities. It's a matter of life and death, of cultural survival for millions of people.
His strong stance on religious freedom, his deep understanding of faith traditions, it naturally led him to engage and often clash quite publicly with prominent voices in the new atheist movement. Back in a 2014 interview, Aslan criticized what he termed the armchair atheism of figures like Sam Harris and Bill Maher, arguing they lacked formal training in religious studies and were therefore, in his view, unable to effectively comment on how religion actually shapes human behavior in nuanced ways.
Questioning their credentials to speak on the topic.
He even called Richard Dawkins a buffoon in that context, contrasting them with what he called the philosophical atheism of earlier thinkers, perhaps like Nietzsche or Marx, who he said were experts in religion, people who understood religious texts and history deeply before critiquing them. It's a strong critique, focusing heavily on academic credentials versus maybe popular commentary.
It is. And one could argue, as you hinted earlier, that perhaps a common person's experience of faith, or their reasons for lacking faith, is also a valid perspective, even if it's an armchair observation from an academic standpoint. Is Aslan's position perhaps too dismissive of lived, non-academic experiences?
Yeah, that's the counter-argument, isn't it?
It's a very fair question, and it really gets to the heart of that particular debate. Aslan's position, as he articulated it, reveals him as a staunch defender of nuanced, contextualized religious understanding, against what he perceives as simplistic and often prejudiced critiques. His arguments against armchair atheism center on the importance of academic rigor, historical context, sociological understanding when analyzing complex social phenomena like religion. He believes that without that deep academic grounding, one risks making broad, inaccurate, potentially harmful generalizations. For him, a lived, non-academic experience is certainly valid for personal belief or non-belief, but not necessarily for making scholarly judgments or broad public pronouncements about global religious trends or the fundamental nature of faith itself.
So it's about the scope of the claims being made.
Exactly. This isn't just a casual disagreement. It's a fundamental clash of methodologies, of worldviews, pitting a kind of social, scientific, historical approach against a more philosophical or sometimes purely observational critique.
And this clash played out very dramatically on CNN in September 2014. Aslan criticized comedian Bill Maher quite strongly for characterizing female genital mutilation, FGM, as simply an Islamic problem. In addition to Maher making several other sweeping generalizations about the faith of Islam.
Right, that debate got a lot of traction.
Aslan directly challenged Maher, stating, quote, "To say Muslim countries as though Pakistan and Turkey are the same, it's frankly, and I use this word seriously, stupid." Very direct. He also highlighted what he saw as U.S. hypocrisy, condemning ISIS actions while simultaneously partnering closely with Saudi Arabia, pointing out that Saudi Arabia had, according to reports he cited, beheaded 19 people during the very time ISIS actions were being intensely discussed, drawing a direct, uncomfortable parallel that put Maher on the defensive.
That debate became a significant flashpoint for Aslan's argument that generalizing about an entire religion, especially one as vast and diverse as Islam with over 1 billion followers, is not only reductive, but, in his words, bigoted. He followed up with an article in the New York Times in October 2014 titled, "Bill Maher isn't the only one who misunderstands religion," where he wrote, and this is key, Bill Maher is right to condemn religious practices that violate fundamental human rights. Religious communities must do more to counter extremist interpretations of their faith. So he's not defending the practices.
Right, he acknowledges the problem.
But he continues, failing to recognize that religion is embedded in culture and making a blanket judgment about the world's second largest religion is simply bigotry. No. So Aslan isn't defending harmful practices themselves. He's attacking the analytical framework used to critique them, arguing for much more precision in cultural context. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, essentially.
Okay, but this wasn't a one-sided discussion, right? There were counter-critiques to Aslan's points as well.
Oh, absolutely. And it's crucial to acknowledge those counter-critiques to get the full picture. Eric Sasson, writing in The New Republic, directly challenged some of Aslan's claims from that CNN interview with Maher. For instance, Sasson pointed out Human Rights Watch reports indicating a significant rollback of women's rights in places like Indonesia and Turkey, even though those countries had elected female leaders at times, which complicated Aslan's argument about the necessarily progressive nature of moderate Islamist parties in power.
Okay, so pushing back on that specific point.
Yes. Saz also noted that FGM, the issue Maher raised, is documented as a significant issue in Muslim-majority Malaysia, not just confined to Central Africa, as Aslan seemed to imply in the debate, suggesting the problem was perhaps more widespread within diverse Muslim contexts than Aslan presented it.
Got it.
David Pakman, another commentator, also cast doubt on some of Aslan's broader claims, particularly regarding the universality or uniqueness of certain types of religious violence he discussed. And Sam Harris, one of the prominent new atheists Aslan had initially critiqued, fired back as well. Harris criticized Aslan for what he saw as a tendency to consistently blame individuals or political factors or misinterpretations rather than Islam itself for violence committed in its name, labeling Aslan's arguments as postmodernist nonsense that essentially absolved religion of any inherent responsibility.
So a real back and forth about where responsibility lies, individuals, interpretations, culture, or the religion's core tenets.
Exactly. This extended dialogue, this whole controversy, it really challenges you, the listener, to consider the pitfalls of generalizations, especially when discussing vast and diverse religious traditions. It encourages a critical examination of both religious defenses and secular critiques, prompting crucial questions about how we can discuss sensitive cultural and religious issues responsibly and accurately. How do we avoid both uncritical acceptance of problematic practices and prejudiced condemnation of entire groups or traditions?
It's a difficult balance.
It is. And it also powerfully exposes the complexity of international relations human rights debates, reminding us that there are rarely simple, universally agreed-upon answers, and that even the definitions of things like progress or responsibility or causation can be intensely debated depending on your framework. It's a crucial lesson in critical engagement with public discourse.
These public engagements, from academic debates to media firestorms, they really reveal a scholar deeply embedded in the contemporary world, whose professional life intertwines significantly with his personal journey and, well, public recognition. On a more personal note, just to round out the picture, Aslan was previously engaged to the journalist Amanda Fortini, but that relationship ended back in 2008. He then married Jessica Jackley in 2011. She's an entrepreneur and author known for co-founding Kiva, and she is Christian. So they formed an interfaith family. They have 3 sons together, which really brings home his message of bridging divides, quite literally, within his own home.
It really does. His personal life, particularly his interfaith marriage to Jessica Jackley, provides a very tangible, living example of the principles he often espouses in his work. It reflects his broader message of bridging divides, finding common ground across different belief systems, demonstrating how diverse faiths can coexist and apparently thrive within a single household.
Yeah.
It shows a practical application of his philosophical stance, that religion is, perhaps primarily, a personal language of faith. The mention of his aunt being the well-known Iranian American pop singer Layla Farohar, or his interest as a fan of the Las Vegas Raiders professional football team. These details also help humanize a figure often at the center of intense academic and political debates, reminding us that even public intellectuals are complex individuals with varied interests, family ties, passions, just like anyone else. It gives you a more complete picture of the person behind the public persona.
And it's clear Aslan is a figure who has not only contributed significantly to public discourse, but has also been recognized formally for those contributions. He's received several awards and honors over the years, including the 2014 Intersections Honoree, the 2013 Media Bridge Builder Award from the Tannenbaum Center for Interreligious Understanding that seems particularly apt,
Ever fitting, yes.
the 2013 Peter J. Gomes Memorial Honor from his alma mater, Harvard Divinity School, and the 2012 East-West Media Award from the Levantine Center.
These various awards really underscore the perceived impact of his work in specific circles, particularly in fostering interreligious dialogue, bridging cultural divides, challenging conventional narratives. That Media Bridge Builder Award, in particular, highlights his unique ability, or at least the recognition of his ability to translate complex scholarly ideas into accessible public conversations across various platforms, which is precisely what we've been unpacking today. These honors indicate that despite the controversies, despite the criticisms, his overarching mission of promoting understanding and nuanced perspectives is widely valued, at least within certain institutions or organizations dedicated to similar goals. It showcases the duality of his public perception, a figure who both sparks significant debate and earns significant recognition.
So where is he now? What's the current chapter?
Today, Reza Aslan remains a professor of creative writing at the University of California, Riverside, a role that seems to perfectly blend his academic background with his narrative skills.
Makes sense.
He also serves on various boards, including the National Iranian American Council, or NIAC, which advocates for the interests of Iranian Americans. In 2015, as an NIAC member, he notably supported the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action that was the Iran Nuclear Program Agreement, a highly contentious political issue at the time and still debated.
Right, placing him firmly in certain policy debates.
Exactly. He is also a member of key academic organizations like the American Academy of Religion and the International Quranic Studies Association, cementing his ongoing standing within the academic community, despite any public debates about his specific credentials or interpretations. His continued academic role at UC Riverside, his involvement with organizations like NIAC, various advisory boards, it all demonstrates an ongoing commitment to both scholarly pursuits and political advocacy. His support for the Iran nuclear deal highlights his engagement with real-world policy issues, consistent perhaps with his earlier call to engage moderate political forces. It shows a continuity between his academic analysis and his practical involvement in current affairs.
So wrapping things up after this deep dive.
Well, what we've really seen today is the journey of a scholar who simply refuses to stay in any single lane, doesn't he? From navigating deeply personal religious conversions to penning best-selling books that fundamentally challenge historical narratives about both Islam and Christianity, to producing television that seeks to illuminate diverse, sometimes controversial cultures. Aslan has consistently aimed to unpack complex truths for a broad audience, even when it means facing intense scrutiny, professional consequences, or accusations from multiple sides. His career is really a masterclass in intellectual boundary pushing, for better or worse, depending on your view.
Yeah, he reminds us that expertise isn't always neatly confined to a single academic department or a single perspective, and that challenging established narratives, whether religious or political or historical, often comes with both accolades and fierce criticism. It's rarely a smooth ride. Whether you agree with his interpretations or his conclusions or not, his career forces us to critically examine how we understand faith, politics, history, and media in our incredibly interconnected, often polarized world. He makes us ask tough questions about how we consume and evaluate information, and from whom.
So maybe a final thought after this deep dive.
Yeah.
You might ask yourself this. In an age absolutely saturated with instant information, with very strong opinions flying everywhere, how much are we truly willing to engage? To engage with ideas that come from unexpected sources, perhaps from someone with a different background than we expect, or ideas that genuinely challenge our own preconceived notions about who is allowed to tell certain stories or what the correct interpretation should be.
That's a question worth pondering, isn't it? As you continue your own deep dives into the complex world around you.